Pick up an earthworm, that soft, blind little creature that lives in the dirt, and guess what? It has a brain. Now look at a tree, a 100-meter sequoia that lives 1,000 years, that survives fires, droughts, and storms, and it has no brain at all, zero neurons. Stop for a second, because this makes no sense. The earthworm, which any bird swallows in a single peck, has a brain, while the giant tree, which outlasts centuries, doesn't. How can that be? If a brain is a sign that a living thing is more advanced, more capable, more successful, then why was it the worm that got one and not the tree? The answer to this silly little question is going to unravel everything you think you know about what a brain even is. Let's talk about what you probably think, because look, it's what almost everyone thinks, that the brain is the organ for thinking, the most special thing a living being can have, the peak, the prize, the final level of evolution. And so, without noticing, we build a little staircase in our heads, with plants down at the bottom, motionless, dumb, unresponsive. One step up the simple little creatures, further up the clever animals, and at the very top, us, with our giant brain. In this story we tell ourselves, having a brain means having one, means being important, and not having a brain means being left behind, being a lesser form of life that evolution sort of set aside for later. It makes sense, right? It's neat, it's tidy, and it puts us in the highest spot. There's just one problem. It's completely wrong. The tree isn't a failed version of an animal. The tree isn't trying to have a brain and failing. The tree simply never needed one, and you can understand exactly why. Because the brain isn't for thinking. I know, it sounds absurd, but hold on to this sentence, because it's the heart of everything. The brain wasn't born to think. It was born to move a body through the world. Thinking came much, much later. It was almost an accident along the way, a side effect of a far more basic and far more urgent problem: how to control a body that moves. And that's why the difference between the earthworm and the tree isn't intelligence, it's movement. Let's think about what the worm has to do to stay alive. It has to crawl. It has to feel whether the dirt ahead is wet or dry. It has to flee when the ground shakes, because a tremor might be a predator coming. And it has to decide, right now, this very second, which way to go. Notice that word, now. A body that moves lives in a world that changes all the time, and changes fast. The predator appears out of nowhere. The hole opens up from nothing. The food is right there, and a moment later it's gone. To handle that, you need a control center that does three things at once: take in the signals from the senses, decide what to do, and send the order to the muscles, all in a fraction of a second. That control center is the brain, which is really a machine for reacting quickly to a world that won't sit still. A machine for predicting the next instant so it can move the body at exactly the right time. And here's the brilliant part. Without movement, that whole problem simply doesn't exist. So much so that nature has a living proof of this. A little creature that shows the link between brain and movement in an almost disturbing way. There's a sea creature called a sea squirt. And when it's born, it's a tiny larva shaped like a tadpole. And it swims. And to swim, it has a small brain, a cluster of neurons that controls the body, senses light, senses gravity, and guides that swimming. This larva has one single mission in life: to find a good place to live. A rock, the hull of a ship, a firm spot on the ocean floor. So it swims, searches, tests, using that brain to decide not here, not here, here yes. And when it finds the perfect spot, it latches on, fixes its head to the rock, and never leaves again, becoming a motionless little thing, sort of like a little sack that just filters water to eat for the rest of its life. Now comes the part that gives you chills. After it latches on, once it's never going to move again, it absorbs its own brain, digests it, and reuses it as food. And why? Because a brain is for guiding movement, and it's not going to move anymore. So, for this creature, The brain became dead weight, an expensive organ with no function at all. Better to recycle it. Let that sink in, because there's no cleaner proof. The moment this animal stops moving is exactly the moment it throws away its brain. A brain is a tool for movement. Take away the movement, and you take away the brain's reason to exist. And now go back to our question from the start, because suddenly the tree makes total sense. The tree grows from a seed and puts down roots, and roots are a commitment, because it's going to spend its entire life in exactly that spot. It's the sea squirt glued to the rock, except from day one. Then you think, but the tree has problems to solve too. It needs light, it needs water, it needs to defend itself from creatures that eat its leaves. And that's true, absolutely. But notice how it solves them. When there's not enough light, the tree doesn't run somewhere else. It grows, slowly, toward the sun, taking days, weeks. When there's not enough water, it doesn't go looking for a river. It stretches its roots, millimeter by millimeter, month after month. And when an insect starts eating its leaves, it doesn't flee or fight back. It manufactures a chemical poison inside the leaf itself, making it taste bad so the insect goes away. See the pattern? The tree solves everything with chemistry and with time. It doesn't need an answer in a fraction of a second, because it doesn't live in the urgency of now. It lives at the pace of days, seasons, years. And for that slow pace, you don't need a fast control center like a brain. You solve everything with chemical signals that travel through the body in their own time. No rush. No hurry. The worm lives in the second. The tree lives in the decade. And each one has exactly the kind of control that its pace of life demands. But maybe you're thinking, okay, the tree is slow, but it's kind of dumb, right? It just reacts and that's it. And this is where things take another turn, because not having a brain is not the same as not being capable. We've learned to confuse two things, having a brain and being intelligent, as if they were the same thing, but they're not. And nature is full of proof. There's a plant, the sensitive plant, that folds its leaves when you touch it, and scientists ran an experiment dropping water on it, over and over, just to startle it. And at first it folded, but after a while it realized that drop was harmless, and it stopped folding. And it held on to that information for weeks. In other words, a form of memory in a plant, without a single neuron. And there's more. When a tree is attacked by insects, it releases a scent into the air, and the neighboring trees sense that scent and start producing defenses before they're even attacked. So it's an entire forest trading warnings, with no mouth, no brain, nothing we'd call a mind. And look at this one, which is jaw-dropping. There's a thing called slime mold, which isn't an animal and isn't a plant. It's a strange organism with no brain, and scientists put this slime mold in a maze, with food at both exits, and it solved the maze. It found the shortest path between the 2 points. No brain, no neurons, just a yellow goo spreading in an astonishingly clever way. So notice what's happening to our original question, which started from a hidden assumption, the idea that a brain is the only way for a living thing to be capable, to solve problems, and to remember things. And that's false, because nature discovered many ways to sense, decide, remember, and defend. And the brain is just one of them, the way that works for things that move fast, while for things that live in one place, there are other solutions. Slower, chemical, spread across the whole body, and they've been working beautifully for hundreds of millions of years. There's just one piece left to close this. If a brain is so useful, why didn't the tree get one just as a bonus, just in case? And the answer is the most revealing one of all. A brain is expensive, very expensive. Ours, for example, is only about 2% of the body's weight, but it devours nearly 20% of all the energy we consume, which means a fifth of all the food you eat goes just to keep that organ running, all day long, even while you sleep. And in nature, energy is everything. Every calorie is fought over, and evolution is a merciless accountant. Because if an organ costs more than it gives back, it gets cut. That's exactly what the sea squirt did when it digested its own brain. It cut a cost that was no longer worth it. So the question evolution asks is never, is a brain nice to have? It's, does a brain pay off for this particular living thing? For the worm, which has to flee and hunt and react in the blink of an eye, it pays off. The brain earns back its own price in survival. But for the tree, which stays put and solves everything with slow chemistry, it pays off nothing. A brain would just be a giant mouth burning energy without giving any benefit back. It would be a terrible deal. That's why the tree has no brain. And it's not a failure, it's economy. It's a brilliant choice that evolution made in its favor. So go back to the start, to the worm and the tree. You thought the difference was intelligence, that the worm got a brain for being more advanced, and the tree got left behind. But now you know the truth. The difference was never intelligence, it was movement. The worm moves, so it needs a fast control center to guide that movement, and that center is the brain, while the tree stays still and solves life with chemistry and with time, and never needed a brain at all. There is no staircase, there is no top. The tree isn't a failed attempt to become an animal. It's a masterpiece of a completely different way of existing, rooted, patient, chemical, silent, and victorious for millions of years. The brain, in the end, isn't life's prize. It's just a tool, an expensive and specific tool that nature only hands out to those who have a body to move through a world that changes fast. And here's the thought that might stay with you after the video ends. If the brain was born only to move a body, and it ended up becoming this organ that dreams, imagines, falls in love, and asks questions like the one you just watched, then thought, everything you are, may have started as a simple side effect of learning to walk. But that's a story for another video.